If you have your Bibles, go to Acts 27. We're going to continue in our series through Acts. Today we're going to just start a two-part series. We only have 4 messages left in the book of Acts, and then we have finished the whole book, verse by verse. So here at Centerpoint, if you're new, what we love to do is just open up Scripture and preach through books of the Bible, because we believe that you'll cover every topic under the sun as you go down through Scripture. So today, our series is called Anchored, and the title of the message is Courage in Life's Storm. Acts chapter 27, do you got it? Just say, got it, if you're there. All right. Communication, It's always the key. Verse 1, and we'll read just to start here the first 8 verses. And when it was decided that we should sail for Italy, they delivered Paul and some other prisoners to a centurion of Augustan cohort named Julius. And embarking in a ship of Adramyttium, which was about to sail to the ports along the coast of Asia, we put to sea, accompanied by Archelaus. We put to sea accompanied by, and I'm going to butcher his name, Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, verse 3. The next day we put in at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him leave to go to his friends and be cared for. Right there is something very unique and rare. Julius lets Paul go to be cared by who? The church in that area. And putting out to sea from there, we sailed under the lee of Cyprus because the winds were against us. And when we had sailed across the open sea along the coast of Sicily and Pamphylia, we came to Myra in Lycia. There the centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing for Italy and put us on board. We sailed slowly for a number of days and arrived with difficulty off Sindus. And as the wind did not allow us to go further, we sailed under the lee of Crete off Salmon. Coasting along it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens, near which was the city of Lasea. Now, what we are going to read here is one of the most famous shipwrecks in history. One of the reasons being it's in God's Word. It involves Paul. He's on his way to Rome. It's one of the best told and most detailed accounts of any shipwreck in history, right? So we've all heard about the Titanic. That's the big famous one. But this is the most detailed shipwreck in ancient history. And actually, since it's in God's Word, what I'd say is it's the most profitable to those who read it and to those who hear it. Verses 9 and 10 we read, Since much time had passed and the voyage was now dangerous, because even the fast was already over, Paul advised them, saying, Sirs, I perceive that the voyage will be with injury and much loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also of our lives. So Paul here warns the centurion that they should stay in Fair Havens. To just sort of put this in perspective, let's think back to all of us live in Georgetown, and it's the year 1800. Are you with me? Let's put this in perspective. So we're sailing, and then we can't go any further because the storm's going to be great if we do, right? So let's say we want to make it to Charlottetown because that's where things happen, right? But we have the option of Fair Havens. Now, I say this because I grew up in Georgetown, so if anyone's like, he hates Georgetown, or so do I like this guy, I'm one of them. All right, so we get stuck in Georgetown, year 1800. It's winter. Are we going to have fun? We can't go, like 1800, right? There's no Tim Hortons in Montague. None whatsoever, right? So basically, that's going to be a pretty boring winter. So here's what happens. The centurion and the captain go, we don't want to be stuck here in Fair Havens. Just 40 miles up the coast, there's a place called Phoenix. Now, it's not Phoenix, USA, where the sun is shining and it's beautiful. All right, it's a different Phoenix, but it's a lot better in winter because there's more happening. So they say, let's get in the boat and go where? To Phoenix. Let's leave Fairhaven. So we say, let's leave Georgetown and head to Charlottetown, right? Because there's so much more in Charlottetown, because that's such a huge city. And some people are like, I don't even drive in Charlottetown. It's that big and there's so many people. Small island mentality needs to be busted open, right? I'd love just to take us down to New York. Right? Right, Mom? I'd put you in a car in New York and say, drive. Verses 11 to 13, this is what we read. But the centurion paid more attention to who? The pilot, to the captain, and to the owner of the ship than to what Paul said. And because the harbor was not suitable to spend the winter in, the majority decided to put out to sea from there on the chance that somehow they could reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete, facing both southwest and northwest, and they'd spend the winter there. Now when the south wind blew gently, supposing that they had obtained their purpose, they weighed an anchor and they sailed along Crete close to the shore. So here's what's happening. They're on their way. The sailors actually had a name for a wind that's about to come. And their name is Euraquilo. And basically this was going to be a wind that every sailor feared. They actually thought that Zeus, you know the Greek god Zeus, lived on Mount Ida, okay? So what they believed was this, that when those boats would come through this time of year, Zeus, the Greek god, would send this wind down from the mountain. It would destroy the ship or carry the ship west across the ocean, many times breaking up on the rocks, and they would be left to die. So that's their view. As we read verses 14 and 20, we're going to see that this trip isn't as fun as they first thought it might be. Verse 14, but soon the wind, called the nor'easter, struck down from the land. And when the ship was caught and could not face the wind, we gave way to it and were driven along, running under the lee of a small island called Cauda. We managed with difficulty to secure the ship's boat. After hoisting it up, they used supports to undergird the ship. Then, fearing that they would run aground on Citrus, they lowered the gear, and thus they were driven along. Verse 18. Since we were violently storm-tossed, they began the next day to jettison the cargo. And on the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. Verse 20. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope of our being saved was at last abandoned. Here's what happens. 276 men are on this boat, and all of a sudden, these are horrible conditions. And they start to fear, they start to give up hope. But the good news is Paul is on the boat. And 2 years earlier, if you remember, Jesus visited Paul. He showed up to strengthen him and encourage him, to tell him, keep going because you will make it to Rome. It's going to happen. So here's the good news. Despite the storm, Paul knows that God is going to what? Pull them through this storm, because God promised Paul, you're going to be in Rome. Here's the good news. If you know and love Jesus, you have seen Jesus show up in your life many times. And some of you, you have what we call backpack experience, right? Here's a tough situation, but I walked through it and I seen the hand of God in it, so that the next time another tough situation came, I could trust him, because why? I have experience. Paul has experience of Jesus showing up, pulling him through over and over. It's what we call backpack experience. Here's what you need to see. God did not promise them smooth sailing. He didn't promise them smooth sailing. And as we serve Jesus, Centerpoint, I will tell you this. It is going to be hard. There are going to be many trials that you face as you walk through this. There's going to be breakdowns. There's going to be high seas. Okay? So let's not paint Christianity as this fun-filled adventure. Let's paint it as there's moments where it's fun, but there's also moments where it's very hard. And as you walk with Jesus, here's what you get as you walk through those hard times. You get peace. There's this peace that just steadies you many times. You get assurance that God is sovereign. God knows what he's doing. He's over all of this situation. You also get fruitfulness. It's beautiful when someone walks through a tough storm in their life, but they're growing from it. It's beautiful to watch and see. It's also neat to get the sustaining presence of God. Ever walked through a hard time, but you know God is there? He's here. He hasn't abandoned me. Matthew chapter 14. Jesus has his disciples and he says this to them. Get in the boat and just head to the sea. I'll join you later. So Jesus lets his disciples hop on a boat, go out into the sea, and Jesus goes off to a mountain to pray. And while the disciples are on a sea, a storm starts, a storm that was going to threaten their lives, take their lives. And if you remember this account, it's famous. Those of you who grew up in church, those of you who read your Bible, you know what happens. The storm happens, but then all of a sudden, here's Jesus walking on the water towards his disciples. They start to flip out. There's a ghost, but it's really Jesus Christ. And he comes and he gives this assurance to his disciples. One of them gets out of a boat and actually walks on water. So Peter is the only person other than Jesus to ever walk on water. We focus a lot on the fact Peter sank, but he did walk on water. And all of a sudden, Jesus rescues Peter, gets on the boat, and he does something miraculous. He stops the storm. Matthew chapter 14, the account is there. Now here's the good news. Jesus told the disciples to go out on the lake, didn't he? A storm happened. But here's the good news if you see this. Those who claim to follow Jesus, right? We are not promised that it's going to be smooth sailing like a calm wind on the ocean. We're never promised this. And they go out there and it's a huge storm. And really what we see here is Paul is in the midst of a storm in Acts now. The ship is going to wreck. And then we read verses 21 and 22, which is good news. Since they had been without food for a long time, Paul stood up among them and he said, Men, I love this. Right? Sometimes people are right. Ever know that person? They love you. They've counseled you. You didn't listen to what they were saying. Here's a good verse for those of you who like to say, I told you so. It's biblical. Paul stood up among them and said, Men, you should have listened to me. Like that. Men, you should have listened to me. And you should not have set sail for Crete and incurred this injury and loss. Yet now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. Good news. Huge waves are all around the ship, but Paul's heart is calm. It's calm in the midst of the storm because he was anchored in the way the rest knew nothing about, right? Sometimes we flip out when things get really hard in our life. We're running around, we're frantic, we're trying to rule everything, control everything. But those who truly love Jesus and trust Jesus, here's the thing, whenever that happens in their lives, they trust him. They're not flipping out. They're not frantic. They're not anxious. They're not worried. Because every follower of Jesus can have courage in the midst of the storms of life. Every follower of Jesus. And we're not downplaying today that if you have gone through a hard time, that doesn't hurt. Those emotions are real. You might be angry. You might be, right, sad, upset, whatever the emotion is. We don't want to deny that. We don't want to downplay it. Pain is real. Storms are real. However, Jesus can steady you. Jesus can give you strength, and you need to be courageous. Here's what we're going to do today. There's 4 anchors I believe we need to set down in our personal walk with Jesus Christ in order to have courage in life's storms. The first anchor is this. It's the anchor of God's presence. When we are walking through the storms of life, we need to know this. God is here. And we have that anchor and we throw that anchor out. Verse 23, Paul continues, "For this very night there stood before me an angel of God, to whom I belong and to whom I worship, or to whom I serve." So he's on the deck of a sinking ship, and Paul is anchored in one thing right now: God's presence. The boat's going to go down, but Paul realizes God is where? Right here. He's present. It's a constant reality for him all the time. Acts chapter 18, verses 9 and 10. This is what we read. And the Lord said to Paul one night in a vision, "Do not be afraid, but go on speaking. Do not be silent." And here's the good news. Verse 10 of chapter 18. "For I am with you. No one will attack you to harm you, for I have many in this city who are my people." In Caesarea, the apostle, again, Jesus comes to him and speaks to him. The following night, the Lord stood by him and said, "Take courage, for as you have testified to me about the facts in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome." In 2 Timothy 4, 16 and 17, this is what we read. "At my first offense, no one came to stand by me, but all deserted me. May it not be charged against them, but the Lord stood by me and strengthened me." Paul has what we just talked about, backpack experience. It's a storm. It's tough. It's hard. But Jesus is showing up. In Hebrews 13:5, we don't know who the author is. Many theologians think and scholars think it's actually Paul who wrote the book of Hebrews. We can't say it for sure, but it sure sounds like him. Hebrews 13:5, "Keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you." So if you know Jesus, you have promises in Scripture yourselves where God promises, "I will always be there. I will not leave you alone." So how do we become aware of God's presence? That's the question. If God is always there, if we know and love Jesus, how do we become aware of his presence? And I'll say this, rarely it's through an audible voice or a vision. But most times it's through the Spirit of God speaking to our hearts, the core of who we are, and his word. Ever just read his word as you walk through a tough time and just close the Bible and go, "Wow, God's got this under control"? You have confidence in it. You need to be alert to his presence in the midst of a storm. If you are, that's the key to spiritual health. Because you'll have a good view on what God is doing. You'll also be courageous, because when we walk through the storms of life, here's what happens many times. We need to make decisions. We need to make choices. But we want to make those decisions and choices being led by the Spirit of God. And simply, if you're not in God's word, you won't be led. You won't be. You'll be making decisions and choices on your own strength, your own power. So, are you anchored to God's presence? Because if you are, you'll display an amazing courage during the worst storms in your life. David in Psalm chapter 27 writes, we're just going to take a little time and talk about the presence of God so you really get it and understand it. But David says this, "One thing have I asked, that will I seek after, what I need," and here's what he needs. "I need to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple." Now, let's do what the Islanders call, and I got to be careful because this is being recorded, chit-chat, because it could come out a different way. So let's just chat as Islanders, because we have to understand the presence of God, right? Would you agree? We need to. So when David says he wants to dwell in the house of the Lord all his life, is he saying, "I want to be in the church 24/7? The answer is no. He's not saying, let's head to the church 24/7 and just church service. So when I go home Monday, all I do is watch sermons. When I go Tuesday driving in the car, all I do is listen to sermons. No, he's not getting there. But what he's saying is this, and the Bible is clear, that the glory of God and the presence of God cannot be held by the temple. Can I just tell you something? Just because you came here today, there's nothing holy about this building. Okay? And in fact, if the presence of God was to fall down, this building couldn't even hold it. His glory is amazing. His presence is overwhelming. So let's just talk about the presence of God, because God is present in two different ways. The theological term, aren't you loving these last few weeks? Because I'm giving you big words. It's called omnipresence, which simply means this: God is everywhere all the time, fully. Right? So if you came to church today and asked yourself the question, is God here? The answer is obviously yes. He's present everywhere, here today. So there's not little bits and pieces of him everywhere, but fully God is there. So even right now as I'm preaching, we have an atmosphere, right? We have a solar system. So even to say this, on Mars right now, the presence of God is fully there. He's there. He's everywhere, all the time. He's always everywhere in his fullness. Now there's a second kind of presence that the Bible speaks about, and that's what theologians would call special presence or manifest presence. And some people have gone totally crazy here, right? So we see church services sometimes where they're like, the presence of God is falling down and now everyone's laughing and rolling and flipping out. That's crazy. Okay? That's crazy because we have a spirit of control. So the presence of God at times falls down upon us. Are you with me? He's everywhere all the time, but sometimes he's very present. And here's what happens. We can sense it. We can feel it. It's actually a beautiful thing. The glory is made visible. It's felt in our hearts. I remember, you got to get this. I grew up in a Baptist church since a young age, right? So we would sing and we worked our best to do this, right? Because if we happen to go like this to the music, some of you understand this. The next Sunday's sermon was dancing is from the devil. And some of you were swaying to a song and that's evil and sinful when actually it's actually a beautiful thing. So I grew up in a Baptist church. I moved out west. I'm now a pastor and God is stretching me. I'm at the Rexall place where the Oilers play hockey. And there's 16,000 youth and youth leaders gathered all around. And Hillsong United is leading us in worship that night. And you got to get this, right? Baptist boy Howie. And I'm standing there and I'm looking, right? We're on the floor. So like I can turn and I can see all these youth. And what I see is a multitude of young people with their hands held high, singing praise to Jesus. And then reality hits me. Howie, where are you? Why aren't you joining the party? That was a question that the Spirit of God was asking me. And I'll never forget it because it's the first time I ever held my hand up in worship. And not only held it up, I put two up. And they were both high, and I was on my tiptoes, and I was doing something that many men don't do but should do. I was singing. And I was singing at the top of my voice for the glory of Jesus. And it was in that moment I looked around and it was as if the presence of God just dropped on that place. And then I worked with my heart because I don't want to get caught up in the emotional experience, because it's not an emotional experience I'm after. But what I'm after is I love when the presence of God shows up. And for the first time in my life, as a 24-year-old young adult, I experienced God's presence in a fresh new way. And it was beautiful. Sometimes God drops his presence. Are you with me? Ever just have morning devos And it's as if there's Jesus. He's just sitting across from you. The word's so much alive. It's so fresh. And ever have those moments where you read scripture and you got nothing out of it? And it's like, man, why am I doing this? Ever been there? Those are the dry spots. All of us have. We go through these seasons. So here's the reality. Verse 5, David is talking about, right, being really in the presence of God. And he experiences this, and here's what he says. Psalm 27, verse 5. For he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. Here's the good news. Why does David want to be in the house of the Lord? Because he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. Okay, I love that the Bible never pretends trouble isn't coming. It's coming. It never pretends that it's not going to show up. It's going to be there. The Bible says over and over, the storm is coming. The storm is coming. So if you're here today and life is good, you got no worries, no concerns, we praise God for those seasons. But get ready. The storm is coming. You're here today. You have a storm. It's tough. Good news. The Bible says it was to come. Where are you? You're right in his will. In the middle of the storm. The storm is coming. You shouldn't be surprised. Some people think that the Christian life is all about mountaintop experience. No, you got to drag it out and drug it out really in the valley. And then sometimes you get to the mountain and God gives you a glimpse and you're right back in the valley. We go, that's no fun. No, but God is growing us. He's maturing us. Some of us, we need to stop praying. God, take it away. God, take it away. We need to stop praying that. And saying, God, give me the strength. Let me sustain the storm. Let me stand solid on you, the rock. Next line. He will conceal me under the cover of his tent. Oh, this is just getting too good. Don't you love the Bible? Come on. Come on. It's a storm. He's going to conceal me under the cover of his tent. Now get this. The tent was the meeting place in the Old Testament. So when Moses would meet with God, he would go where? Into his tent. And here's what you would see in the Old Testament. God's presence came down. There was a thick, heavy smoke. And the people on the outside were looking and they were going, we better not go near that, because if we go near that, we're going to die. Because God is talking right now to his boy, Moses. And he meets Moses in the tent. And the promise is this: in the day of the storm, we will not only be protected, but God will draw us to his tent. Are you getting this? You don't stand out alone in the storm. God has a shelter, and he meets you in those places. That's why the manifest presence of God is a spectacular thing. And I'll just be real and open with you. Just 3 years ago, me and my wife, we were going through a hard time in our life. Our life was about to turn upside down. And I remember that day, my wife went to Red Point Beach and she met with God. She was screaming, she was crying, and she came home. And I looked at her and I said, Kel, let's go for a drive. We hopped in the car, and I'll never forget it. We ran at the corner at Brudenell. And I looked over at my wife as tears were coming out of her eyes. And I said to her, it's okay, because God knows what he's doing. And all of this is going to work out for his glory, for his honor. And it was as if peace just entered the car. We felt it, God's presence. And God said right there to us, not audibly, but in our hearts to both of us, he said, don't worry, I'll take care of you. And I'm going to do something you never thought would happen. I'll never forget it. And since that day, me and my wife move on, because we know this. That moment in that car, rounding Brudenell, the presence of God and the Spirit of God said, I got this worked out. And here we are 3 years later doing what God has called us to do. It's actually a powerful thing, church, when you depend upon the really presence of God in the storms of your life. So here is the thing. Storms will hit, right? They will. The good news is this. Some of you, they've hit and you walk through them. And here's what's so good. You're able to assist other people who are walking through storms. And isn't this the beauty of the body of Christ? Here's the danger, and I'll speak to it because it's so dangerous. Some of you, when life gets difficult, here's what you do. You run. You run from those who love you most. So, you're involved in the church, and all of a sudden a storm comes, and you just take off. And here's what you do. I will deal with this on my own. And you isolate yourself from a body of believers. And may I just say, once you do that, you are really primed for Satan to attack you. You think the storm's bad? Run away from the body that loves you, and it will be worse. And you, by the grace of God, Lord willing, will come back. But I will guarantee this, you will be hurt and beat up even more. But thank goodness for grace. Do not run when the storm comes, Center Point. Instead, come to the body. Lean on the body. This is why community groups are so important. We're pushing them here at Center Point. And if you're not involved in a community group, you should be. Why? Because you open up your life and you get to live with 8 to 10 other people who share your burdens, who pray for you, who love you, who don't judge you, but they push you towards Jesus. You need that in your life. Since I got you here, and some of you are like, man, he's really saying I should join a community group. He seems sort of mean and harsh. I love you guys. I don't want to see you out on your own by yourself. Now, here's the thing. Do you pray for Center Point? Like, it's Monday. Does God put on your heart, you know what? What God is doing there is very unique. I should pray for it. Do you pray? Can I tell you, as a leader, the most encouraging thing that happens to me is when it's Wednesday and Thursday and I run into someone and they say this, Howie, I just want you to know I've been praying for you. Do you know what that does to your heart? It just goes, ah. I'm not alone. There's people praying for me. I love this. The odd email comes. Howie, today when I was sitting down doing my devotions, I want you to know I remembered your name before the throne of grace. If I'm in a tough time, guess what happens? Even though I'm a dude, there's these things that well up in my eye. Right? And I think dust has blown into my eye because that's the only reason these things are falling out. And they're called tears. And I start to shed tears. Do you pray expecting God to do amazing things in the midst of his body? Do you pray that people would be drawn here on Sunday so that they could hear the gospel and that their lives would be changed so that they would break from their addictions because Jesus Christ in his power rescues them from that? Do you pray that people would be changed? You know, some of you are here and you know Jesus, and I'm just about, I'm going to let her fly. Some people have preached Revelation 3:20 so poorly, so badly. And the way they presented it is to lost people. Jesus is knocking on your door. Open up and let him in. The reality, in context, he's talking to the church. Those who know and love him. And here's what he's saying to those who claim Jesus. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. But I already know him. Why is he knocking on the door? Because you're so cold, you let him outside. He's saying, I'm knocking. All you got to do is open up and I'll eat with you. Some of you are walking through storms, and here's why. You've let Jesus outside the door. You're cold towards him. You don't sense his spirit. When you're convicted, you do nothing about it. And he's there. Knock, knock, knock. Some of you say, I don't feel him. Let him in. Let him save you. But Howie, I really need to get married. No, you really need Jesus. But I need a boyfriend. A boyfriend will make me happy. A girlfriend will make me happy. No, they won't. Only Jesus. Are you with me? So if you get married, guess what you'll find out? Your wife, your husband will not save you. They will actually fail you. But Jesus will save you. He will not fail you. All I need, God, is more money. If you just give me more money, my life would be so much better. No, it wouldn't. All you need is Jesus. Are you following? Behold, I stand at the door and knock. That's to us, the church. Are you opening? Are you eating with him? So when storms of life come, you're not flipping out, you're not frantic, but you're on a solid rock and you go, God's doing something. And it's for my good. It's for my benefit. Number 2. By the way, I have notes. Sometimes I don't follow them. And if you are here today and you need to leave at 12, by all means, leave at 12. But I just feel I need to preach till I'm done. And it won't be 2 hours, don't worry. I'm just letting you know ahead of time. So if you got like Mother's Day dinner, you won't offend me. It's very hard to offend me. I don't even notice if you get up and leave, so don't worry. Number 2, courage in life storms through the anchor of God's ownership. This is the second anchor you need. You need the presence of God, but you need this anchor. God owns me. God owns me. Paul was calm in the storm because he knew he belonged to God. Here's what he says in Acts 27. For this very night there stood before me an angel of the God to whom I, get this, belong. He saw himself as God's property. And this shows me Paul understood the true gospel message. Some of us have presented a false message because we have made the gospel at times more about us than about Jesus. So we say silly things like this, come to Jesus and he will take all your burdens away. The fact is, yeah, he will, but it's not about you. It's about Jesus taking your burdens away. Are you with me? Sometimes we paint the gospel as if you come to Jesus, all life will be better. It'll be so much easier. And I'll simply say, no, it won't. If you come to Jesus, it'll probably be harder. But here's what's totally worth it. He will pull you through the hard times. He will. You come to Jesus, some friends who you hang out with now won't like to hang out with you anymore. And they'll say silly things like this, you're no fun. I remember when you used to be fun. No, you're no fun. That's the reality. Because fun is only found in true fulfillment in the person of Jesus. Everything else is just a false, phony system. What this means is if you come to Jesus and he changes you, he's number 1. You wake up, and the first person on your heart is who? Is Jesus. He's number 1. He leads in all areas of your life. Yes, I said the word all. But Howie, he doesn't really know what he's doing over here. I think I'll lead. No. Repent of that sin. Let Jesus lead in all areas of your life. Here's the thing. If you know and love Jesus, you're actually passionate about him. Ever meet a passionate person who loves Jesus? And you're like, they are crazy. They are nuts. They make me feel horrible. They make me feel bad. Why don't I have that fire? Why don't I have that passion? You can. The question is, are you spending time with Jesus? If he's number 1, you're just passionate. You drive people crazy in a good way. And I would love that our church be filled with passionate people who push people to Jesus. Are you passionate? Are there changes in your life for His glory? I have sat and counseled people after people after people. And they're saying, I love Jesus. And then their life is a mess. Well, how are you honoring Jesus in that area? Tell me. How? Well, I guess I'm not. No. So what do? You make the decisions and choices to what? Honor Jesus. That's what you do. If you know and love Him, you change. You just don't talk it and have it up here. Those people drive me crazy. Are you with me? They talk the talk, but their life doesn't show what they're talking. So we love you. We have grace, but we spur you. Right? Ever see a spur? If you got kicked with the spur, would you like it? No, it's going to hurt. That's what we do. We spur you onto Jesus. You belong to Him. You're owned by Him. The scriptures even say this. You are like His bride as a collective body. We are. Are you with me? Then believe it or not, it also says this. We're like sheep. Now, people have said sheep are stupid. They're not. They're stubborn. Chickens are stupid. But sheep are just stubborn, right? So Jesus says, you're like sheep and I'm the shepherd. I'm the good shepherd. I'm the chief shepherd. Hey, stubborn sheep, I'm coming after you, right? So Jesus will leave the fold to go after the stubborn one because He loves them or loves her. We also belong to Jesus like a child belongs to his father. Did you know if you love and know Jesus, He has adopted you. He's made you a son or a daughter. You are an heir of all that His kingdom holds. It's beautiful. And He's promised you a place someday when you die that you're going to serve with Him. Just before I left the house, my wife, I love this, right? I tell Cal, I pray to God that in the millennial kingdom, He will let me reign and rule and serve Him in Hawaii. Because God's coming and He's going to make it all better. It's going to be all reconciled. And today, I'm about to walk out the door and my wife goes, Howie, you know what? In the kingdom, when Jesus comes, I just want to be a decorator in His kingdom. Like, I want one of the places in His kingdom and I want to decorate it for Him. And I thought, Cal, that's beautiful. And then I said to her, are you praying that? Pray that. I think God's a good father. Right? Someday I fully expect in the millennial kingdom I am going to be on a beach in Hawaii. And some of you who haven't prayed, He's sending you to Alaska. I just got a whole lot of people praying now. God's ownership enabled Paul to stand steady in the storm. Are you with me? God's the owner of all that we are and all that we have. He owns it all. God has entrusted to us what is His right. He owns it, but He gives it to us for our responsibility. So the question is, how are you handling those resources that God has blessed you with? How about this? When we trust God in this way, He honors us by taking care of us. What we entrust to His care, He provides. It's beautiful. Here's how you should think about it. Your home is not your home. It's God's home. Your car, your truck is not your car or truck. It's God's. Let's go a little deeper because we love to do this, right? Let's get the scalpel out. And let's cut. How about your kids? They're not your kids. They're God's kids. Are you letting them go for the glory of Jesus? I'll tell you this, I love my mom. And every day when I was in Winnipeg for, I'd say 7 years, my mom called once a week in tears, when are you coming back to PEI? I said, Mom, stop crying. I'm 23. And I love my mom. It's Mother's Day. I love her. But here's what I'm so thankful for. Even though she did that, she was willing to let me go for the glory of Jesus. Some of you just need to let your kids go because God has something great in store for them. And yeah, it might take them far from you, but it'll be totally worth it. Now, if we hit with kids, how about money? What? Are we really going there? Yeah. Malachi chapter 3. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me. This is God speaking to Israel, the whole nation of you. You're robbing me. And here's what he says, verse 10. Bring the full tithe into the storehouse. It sounds like God wants money. He wants your heart. It's what he wants. Bring it to the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test. The only time in Scripture where God says, test me. And see if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no need. Some of you, are you in financial need? You know and love Jesus? Here's a quick question. I don't know what you give to the church, but are you tithing? No, really, are you tithing for the glory of Jesus? Well, what's a tithe, Howie? Well, the Old Testament said 10% of what we make. New Testament, Jesus shows up and says it's sacrificial giving. So let's say I make $100,000 a year and I give $10,000. I'm not really sacrificing. So it's a heart issue. What do you give? Some of you give so little and you want so much. God, I'm in a financial mess. God, I can't pay my bills. Here's what God's saying. Are you tithing? Are you giving towards the work of the gospel? And you're expecting me, when your priorities are all out of whack, they're all messed up, you're expecting me to give you money that you can't even manage. What dad, get this, what dad would do that with his child? None. A good dad would say what? You need to learn some good management skills. I love you. I show grace sometimes, right? Hey, Dad, can I have $20? Sure. Right? Every day, hey, Dad, can I have $20? $20. If you're a good dad, you're like, no, get a job. Number 3, money. It always makes the church go quiet. Go figure. Courage in life's storms through the anchor of service for God. Here's what we see. Paul knew nothing could harm him unless God allowed it. Are you with me? Amen. Paul's on the boat. He knows that God wouldn't just allow this storm if it was going to kill him, harm him. And here's the thing. I used to say crazy things like this. When I was a young pastor in my 20s, I used to say this. God will only put you through as much as you can handle. I lied. It was false teaching. God will put you through more than you can handle. He often does it all the time. Why? So that you and I can trust him to a fuller, greater extent. Are you with me? Some of you are like, my life's crazy. This is too hard for me. It's so overwhelming. And I'd say, yes, it is. But not for God. Not for God. Serving God. So important. Remember the disciples walking down the road and they start arguing like us, right? Who's the greatest in the kingdom? Oh, well, I think I am, and etc. And then Jesus, I'm amazed by Jesus because he sits them down and instead of just rebuking them, here's what he says. He gives them the answer to who's the greatest. The one who is the servant is the greatest. Are you with me? Paul's a servant of God. 1 John 3:18 says it best. Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. Here's the thing. We serve. Are you with me? Because God has changed us. We love him. So we serve for his glory and honor. For the Christian, however, it is God's love and Jesus' example that compel us to humbly serve in love. Okay? It's his example, and that's what causes us. A few weeks ago, 9 men braved the big journey of going over the Confederation Bridge through the woods to Miramichi. Some of us did this, really. They went off island. They're amazing. I haven't been to the bridge yet. Someday I hope to go to the bridge and drive over it and get off the island because there's a whole big brand new world. Okay. Some of you are with me because some have never ventured off PEI, but 9 of us go to Miramichi because we have this buddy, Victor Summers, who's planning a church. Loves Jesus, loves the gospel, and we show up at the Vogue Theater, and here's what we do. Those of us pretend, like me and Josh, to know what we're doing, and we just grab, right? We grab a saw, and then they say, put down the saw. Some guys who know what they're doing, like Victor and Jimmy, build a stage, and Chris, right? And me, again, it's you and me, right? But we showed up, and then we did all the odd jobs. We had to clean out a basement room, and we did that for the glory of Jesus. And here's what I got. A few days later, Victor writes us, and he says, to Centerpoint Church, a special thank you to the 9 guys that spent the day working on our little community project. It gave the project such a boost, but more importantly, my family and I were so encouraged by the support. You got a young guy married with his son who are pulling at this right now pretty much by themselves. Our community took notice of that support. We made the front page in Miramichi. Go figure. This isn't the graphic. There's like more people in Miramichi. And we made the front page, me and Josh. The guys who are doing everything. God's funny. He has a sense of humor, right? And we're on the front page holding tools. It's actually a beautiful thing. Your support led to a whole lot more people finding about Eastside Church. Thank you, Centerpoint Church. Because of your faithfulness to the ministry of the gospel of Jesus Christ, you now share in the planting of the gospel here in Miramichi. And then he says this, when you live open-handed, you never lose. You serve for the glory of Jesus. One of those anchors, here's the thing, Paul is on the boat, but Paul is serving those who don't know Jesus. It's an amazing thing. It's a powerful thing when we serve. Service, many times, can be done secretly. It's not always up front in public. Can I tell you, Centerpoint Church would fall apart if it wasn't for the people who serve behind the scenes. This is very minor. What this singing we do here, the preaching, it's minor to what really takes place. So our volunteers who serve behind the scenes, sometimes you don't even get thanked, but I thank you. Without you, the gospel wouldn't have impacted as many people as it has so far. We need more people who serve. 4th anchor is this, courage in life's storms through the anchor of trust in God, through the anchor of trust in God. Paul told the others on the ship that they're endangered in verses 24 to 26. And he said, do not be afraid, Paul, you must stand before Caesar. And behold, God has granted to you all those who sail with you. So take heart, men, for I have faith in God that it'll be exactly as I've been told. There's some good faith. But we must run aground on some island, all right? I don't know where. God didn't tell me the island, but we're going to run aground on it. The reason Paul displays so much courage is that he believes God. He trusts God. If our hearts bear the anchor of God's presence, of God's ownership, of God's service, you're going to be able to stand in the storm. Are you with me? You're going to be able to stand. Trusting, resting in God's omnipresence, that he's all-powerful, that he's all-knowing, that he's everywhere at once. And God wants us to be people of courage so that we can stand in the midst of the storm and shout over the storm, don't worry. God's got it all under control. That's what Paul's doing. They're in a storm. It's been dark now for 2 weeks. They don't see the stars. They don't see light. And Paul, in the storm, says this, guys, don't worry. God told me that we're going to make it through the storm. And a little while later, Paul even looks at them and says, eat up. You're going to live. He was anchored in Christ by faith, and that makes all the difference in the world. James 1:2, I'm going to read to you a crazy verse. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. Yes, it said count it all joy. It's crazy. What version's that? It's in them all. Count it all joy. Trials are a blessing. What's a blessing? Simply this. How are they a blessing? That when your faith is tested, you'll see where your faith truly lies. The way to try to weather a ship is not just let the surveyor come in, but it's actually put the boat on the water, right? And let a storm hit it and see how it does. Will it weather the storm? That's the question in our lives. Does our faith and trust really lie in Jesus? We discover that in great mercy, in salvation, that under trial, that the testing of our faith actually proves where our foundation really is lying. Can I just say something? I remember when I was 14 years old, my stepfather, Kenny, looked at me, and I'll never forget this. It's been with me. I'm 34 now, so this is 20 years ago. And he said this, Howie, if you want to make it through life on solid ground, you need to know this. You need to have a solid devotional life. And what he meant was, you need to be in God's Word all the time. Because life is going to hit, and if you're not grounded in the Word of God, you will not know what to do. 14 years old, sitting down with a cup of tea with my stepdad, and he looks at me and that's what he says. I'll never forget it. Because trust me, storms have come. And guess what I'm reminded of? I am so thankful for that advice from a dad who loved me. From a dad who's seen the big picture. I'm so grateful and thankful for it. Because the storms do hit, right? When circumstances are miserable, right? How about the price of lobsters, since that's big news right now? Is that miserable? Yes. But can I just tell you the good news? If you are a fisherman who knows and loves Jesus, the gospel is amazing. And you understand this. God's seen this coming. God understood this. God can steady this. And he's going to work this all out for guess who's good? Mine. God will work this out for his glory and your good. Isn't that awesome? That's good news. Right? So when you go to the newspaper and people are flipping out, the good news is God's not flipping out. The gospel brings gladness and joy. And those of you who know and love Jesus, you've experienced this. David says this, I have set the Lord always before me because he is at my right hand. I will not be shaken. It's an unusual phrase, right? I set the Lord always before me. But here's what he's meaning. I recognize your presence in really when I need help. There you are. You're before me. I recognize you. You're present. Trusting God is something we must choose to do, by the way. Are you with me? Trusting God is something you choose. In our natural flesh, we just don't do this. We like to control the situation. So many times we take control away from God. And David, he was a mighty warrior. He was a gifted man, but here's what he says. Psalm 56:11, in God I trust, I shall not be afraid. How about Romans 8? He who did not spare even his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? Let's read the next verse. We know that for those who love God, all things work together for good. For those who are called according to his purpose. It's all working out for your good. God causes everything to work out for the good to those who love him and know him and who are saved by his grace. Everything. God, since we have some gardeners here and love to garden, God is the gardener of our lives, right? Are you with me? So one of the choicest fruits he wants to plant, I'll say it really low, patience. He wants to plant patience. Going through a storm, wondering where God is. Ever been there? And us in our mighty superhero outfits go, well, I can solve this. And we go to solve it, and some superhero we hit the wall face first. We're laying on the floor. We're huddled in the corner, sucking our thumbs, going, oh no, this is even worse. Why didn't I just wait on God? And God's like, yeah, why didn't you wait on me? Patience. Power is the root issue with patience. Are you with me? We are impatient when our lack of power obstructs our will. We love being in control, right? 4 dudes head for a car. Look out. Who's driving? The one who controls the most. Are you with me? We are people of control. That's why when we go to Superstore and we're in the express lane and there's a lady in front of us with a full cart, we're like, go to that lane. 7 to 10 items. You got 53. Trust me, I count it. Some of us don't have patience. And what it really is, we don't have control. Because we can't do anything. So I go, Mary Myra, deal with this. Because I'm so patient. Patience is understanding the settled reality. We are not in control. We aren't. It's like God put us in a dinghy, put us downstream, and here's what he says. You just keep going downstream and you turn. Where I say turn, you turn. And some of us, because we're stubborn sheep, turn around in the dinghy and we start paddling upstream. And here's what happens. We don't make it upstream in the dinghy. We actually go downstream, and when we hit the end, we're tired and we're exhausted. And we go, I guess I should have did it God's way. Yes. And you are tired and exhausted. Impatient people are tired. Why? Why? Because you're not trusting God. You're controlling circumstances and situations. Here's the last thing I'll say, and I promise when a preacher says this, he always means it. But today I will. Some of you just got that. But if God is so good and he is in control, okay? Our worship team can come up. If God is good and in control, here's what we can do. We can trust the satisfaction or obstruction of our will is the good design of a loving and gracious Father. And that's worth the wait. We mentioned Psalm 27. The very end, verse 14, we read this 2 times. Wait on the Lord. And again, I say, wait on the Lord. Some of you, you're in a storm. And all I can tell you today is this. You're not alone. God is over it. You have a body of believers, if you know Jesus, who love you. If you're here today and you don't, we're asking you, come to Jesus. He'll be there for you in your storm. But some of you, you're in that storm and you just need to hear these words. Wait. Is that how you're going to end the message? You're not going to give me 7 steps how I can get out of waiting? No. You're going to wait. And you're going to pray. And you're going to look for God's hand every single day. You got anyone in your family who doesn't know Jesus and you've been praying for them? Here's the good news. Continue to persevere. But Howie, I've been praying for 20 years. I understand. I've been praying for my dad now for 29 years. And I'll continue to persevere. that the gospel would penetrate the hearts of those who don't know Jesus. Let's pray.